All right, guys, listen. We all have circumstances in our life. We all have things going on. And at sometimes they might be a lot and they might be heavy. At other times they might be a little lower. But here's the deal. You have to ask yourself, are you interested or are you committed? And for a long time, I was interested in getting better, but I was not committed. So I'm going to answer one of the primary questions that I get today. And that is, Paul, what is the first thing you would do in order to succeed in your life? And I go back to, I was stuck at the fire department. And this is interesting because it was actually 8 years ago today, I left the fire department. And I walked away for good. But I was in such a stuck type of mode. And that question of what would you do? And now I'm 8+ years removed. And actually, it might be 9. I don't know, 8 or 9. I can't remember. But the point is this. What would I do? Knowing everything that I know now about being interested or committed and having circumstances or whatever, it all comes down to this. Are you willing to risk it all on yourself? For real. Are you willing to go all in on you? As a man, as a husband, as a father, would you bet on yourself? Now, most of you are probably betting on sports to some level. I'm not saying good or bad. It's just not something that I do very often. But with your habits, with your circumstances, with how you lead yourself, if there was a camera that followed you around 24/7, 7 days a week, would you bet on yourself? And for a long time, for me, that answer would be no. Why? Because I was inconsistent. Why? Because I was highly emotional. Because even though people from the outside thought I was dependable, I never depended on myself. I never believed in myself. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the skill set. I didn't have the mindset to do this one thing until push came to shove. And I got so fed up with where I was that I had to make that change, right? Because that's the interesting thing about fear, guys, is fear's going to push you to the brink to make a change to the point where staying the same no longer makes sense. And you're willing to step into that fear and make that change. And about a year before I left the fire department, I had made that change in my body and my health. I was like, you know what? When 2016 rolled around, I had just lost my best friend. I was like, I got to do something different. My first son was born. We had went to more funerals and weddings in the past year. I was like, this is not going to work. I was 30 years old. So I started making that change. I was like, I got to lose weight. I got to work out. I got to be the man for my son because he was an infant. And he doesn't know my bullshit right now. He doesn't know that I'm not disciplined. He doesn't know that I'm not consistent. He doesn't know that I'm basically a piece of shit right now. So all of these things came in line with me losing my friend, my son being born, me understanding that I needed to be better. And it was the culmination of basically those stars aligning that said, hey, you got to step up. And so I started losing the weight. I went from 223 to 178 in about a year. It was 40 pounds or more. And then I realized once I started this growth journey, right? Once I started propelling myself down the path, I started seeing things. I started getting clarity, which is what we've talked about. And I started realizing that the career that I had chosen, the firefighting career that I started when I was 16 years old, that I was into it for like 16 years or 15 years. I had spent all this money on degrees. I put my life on the line. I sacrificed my family and my time and my freedom. I realized that staying in that place was not going to make me happy. And then I started getting this notion of what would it look like if I left? What would it mean if I walked away from the fire department? And initially it was fear and stress and anxiety of what am I going to do? How am I going to pay for life? Insurance and this. And then I realized that that was the path I needed to walk. The thing that I was most fearful of was the path that I needed to move forward. Because if I chose to stay the same and stay in the fire department, it was going to kill me. And I don't say that lightly. It was going to kill me. And I realized my son was going to wake up one day and his father was going to be gone. My wife's husband was going to be gone. My mother's son was going to be gone. But I knew I had to do it for myself because I was willing to bet on myself and bet on my wife and bet on our drive and work ethic and determination and stubbornness, honestly, to make whatever it was, the next chapter, whatever that may be the next thing. I was willing to bet it all on us. And we did. I left the fire department, and within a matter of 2 to 3 weeks, I started my own business. Completely new field, similar ideology or philosophy to the fire department as far as inspections go. And I started getting outside my comfort zone, and I started building this business. I started spending more time with my son, which was fantastic. And then within 3 months, I had to do it again. I shut down that business and I relaunched my wife's wellness business, which is what we're in now, over 8 years later. And I cashed out my retirement, 14 years of retirement, and we put that right into the business because we were betting on ourselves. And all of that's fine and dandy, but that betting on ourselves and that going all in started a year before I left the fire department, when I was out of shape, when I was depressed, when I was unhealthy, when I wasn't disciplined. That's when the seed got planted. That's when the mindset shift happened, because I had to go through being at that place, that low of a pit, to then trying to climb out of it and then succeed and fail, to realize I could bet on myself, to realize going, no, you know what? I've lost 40 fucking pounds in a year. And this year I've started growing and I started doing all these things that I never would have done. I didn't know when I started making those shifts that I was going to leave the only career I'd ever had. So that's the question, guys. Would you right now, based on your habits and your skill set and your wisdom and your current situation, would you bet on yourself to win a year, 2 years, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years down the road? Would you be willing to bet on yourself and risk it all to live the life that you want to live? So what would I do different? I guess the truth is I wouldn't do anything different. There's a lot of mistakes along the way that I'd like to change. There's a lot of things that I would like to maybe shift a little bit. But I had to go through what I went through in order to be where I'm at today. So if that one question, would I be willing to bet on myself? Yes, I would. And if that answer is a no for you guys, then you have work to do. And as long as you're committed to doing the work, and as long as you're committed to being the best man, to being the best dad you can be, then eventually the answer will be yes. But you got to start moving that direction. And too much nowadays, men are not expanding, they're contracting. You see, that's where this game of expansion, this game of growth, this game of personal development, it's evergreen. It does not stop. I actually find myself in that place today. Am I willing to risk everything that I've built this past 8 years right now? Money, my current business, my family's livelihood. I'm at that point again with a situation that I'll talk about here soon. Am I at that point where I'm willing to bet it all? And it's like the fact that I have any hesitancy right now, based on everything that I've told you guys, based on the past 8 years, is actually crazy to me, because I'm much better than I was 8 years ago. I'm much better than I was 9 years ago. My discipline, my consistency, the man I am today, how I am with my kids, my business, my wife, and all of that stuff is much better than it was. But see, I still have that fear and I still have that hesitation sometimes when big things come up. And that's what I am aiming to destroy. So I'll keep you guys up to date, but right now, are you willing to bet on yourself? Until then, guys, dominate daily.